few audiences. So. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for showing up. We certainly appreciate you coming out to learn a little bit about your candidates. So my name is going to go up and down a little bit. My name is Frank Edelblut, so I'm the Commissioner of Education, and I just feel honored to be asked to come and help moderate this event for you. Just so that we kind of get a sense as to who is here this evening. So if you are Ward 1, will you raise your hand? Manchester, Ward 1. Okay, we got one Ward 1 over there. How about Ward 2? Okay, Ward 2 is. We got a few more folks. Okay. Oopsie. Ward 3. Okay, Ward 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. No 10s. 11. Or 12. Okay, and how many outside of Manchester do we have with us tonight? Okay, we have a bunch of folks from outside of Manchester as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. So the ground rules for this evening is we are going to try and move fast so we can get to as many possible questions as we can. We will start out by asking the candidates to do a 30-second introduction. And as they do their 30-second introduction, we have a timer here, and he'll be showing you the cards all evening. And he's going to give you a 15-second warning, which is the yellow. The red is going to be the stop, so wrap up that sentence. If you continue to ramble on for a long time, I will interrupt you at some point. It will be a 30-second introduction. Then we're going to pose questions to you. And we're going to let everybody get a chance to answer the question if they would like to respond to that question. I will just mix it up in terms of who I start with, sort of randomized there. If the question is addressed to a specific candidate, I will probably start with that candidate, but let the other candidates go. You have 1 minute in order to be able to answer the question and, again, wrap it up. So it's going to be quick. We'll hopefully cover a lot of different things. Again, everybody's going to get a chance. And then at the end, what we'll do is we'll cut off a little bit early and give you 1 minute to just kind of have closing remarks. And I don't know. I'll have to figure out how we're going to do closing remarks. Actually, so we'll probably start with the opening. We'll go this way. Closing, we'll go that way. How about that? That was fairly random because you guys picked your seats. Is that okay?
Sure.
You're good with that? All right. Okay, so then why don't we, I know cards have been distributed to everyone in the audience. If you have questions, if you could fill out those cards and hand those in. And if you need pens, I've got some pens here. Pass a pen down there. Okay, anyone else? Pens? Yep, there you go. Okay, I've got one card already. Okay, so why don't, and you're the timer.
How much time do they have to answer a question?
So it's 30-second opening and then 1 minute for the questions. So right now we're doing a 30-second open, and our first candidate, thank you so much. And you just move those mics around so that everyone can hear you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Thomas. I'm running for school board of Ward 12. I'm hoping to make a change on the board as far as, keeping, the tax cap where it is, not going over it, and trying to get the teachers and children, everything what they need, and basically making a change.
My name's John DePietro. I'm running from Ward 6, and I've got a few specific policy issues I've been focusing on, such as curriculum excellence, making our class sizes more consistent, and reining in bureaucracy. But overall, what I'm really looking to do is to be a change agent. I think we have a change agent already in Superintendent Vargas, and I have experience doing that as a volunteer leader for the last 15 years in a professional association, and I want to bring that to the board.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Freeman. I'm the incumbent in Ward 5. This is my first term on the school board, but hopefully not my last. I have enjoyed my time. We have set some really great foundational work, and I really would like to see another 2 years so I can see this to full fruition.
I'm Jimmy LaHoo, candidate Ward 8. I have married 15 years, 2 kids, currently in the public school system, one at Southside and one at MST High School, which is a fantastic school. Actually, it's the gem of the city, and very proud that my son goes there. I want to help create change on the board. I think, again, with Dr. Vargas, we started in that right direction, and I hope to move that momentum forward.
Hi, my name is Arthur Beaudry. I represent Ward 9 in Manchester. I'm running for re-election, and I just want to continue the good things that have been happening in our school district. We always hear the negative stuff, but there's been a lot of great things that have happened in our school district in the last year. Dr. Vargas has been awesome as our superintendent, and I want to continue working with him for the betterment of our school district.
Hi, my name is Mary Georges. I'm an American citizen, born in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. But I'm a mother of 4, which my 3 children was born here. Then born in Manchester, went to the public school, and I understand the problem, the situation, and that's why I stand as an activist, advocate. I stand all the time because I need to do positive change. And I love students, I love children. That is my passion. I'm also minister. That is where I stand.
Hi, my name is Leslie Want, and I'm candidate for school board in Ward 4. And when we were told to come up with one sentence to describe our mission, my mission is I'm here to advocate for students and their families, and it's just that simple. And I think I've done that for the last 2 years. I think part of my advocacy was to gain more additional funding, where we were able to put, in the middle schools, we were able to add foreign language, health classes, and reading classes, and I want to continue that good work. And I thank Barbara Shaw for that as well. She's sitting right in front there. And that's me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Scannell. I am the candidate for school board in Ward 2. I'm a nearly lifelong resident of Manchester and Ward 2. I live in the house that I grew up in. I'm a product of Central, a product of Hillside, a product of Smith Road, and they were the most important institutional influences in my life. And my desire is to give back to those institutions through policies that are fiscally responsible, that promote educational excellence, and open up more opportunities for an official role with parents and students and teachers in school policy. Thanks.
My name is Mark Flanders. I'm running for Ward 4 School Board. I'm a lifelong resident of the city, 35-year resident of the ward. Married, have 2 children who attend Central. I'm not a politician. I come here as a citizen of Manchester looking to change the way the school board is run, to bring some function to a dysfunctional school board. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for those introductions. And I noticed we don't have name tags up there, so in case somebody loses track of all the different names, because I was trying to remember everybody, some new names as we went along, you may just want to, as you give an answer, you may just want to like throw your name out there again, since these are voters out here and they want to remember your names when they get to the ballot box. I'm going to start with a big question, and then we'll probably we'll work our way down into some of the more micro stuff. So, David, you want to take the first one here? How about, what does it mean to be educated? Good philosophical, big question, right?
Sure. Being educated means being an active citizen in our democracy. My job as a school teacher, and I think everyone's job as a school teacher, is not just to teach English and math and science, but it is to put back into our communities people who are kind to others, useful to society, and yes, happy with themselves, so that they can be active, informed participants in what's going on in the world. So being educated does not mean a series of degrees or a series of letters after one's name. It means those 3 things that I just talked about, but taking the skills that give you passion in your life, that allow you, yes, to make a living and to raise a family, but it's also bumping it up to that additional level where people are public and active citizens. And schools are the crucible of our democracy. And it's just sort of by happenstance. I think we teach the subjects that we like to teach as teachers, but deep down, that is our mission, because our democracy depends on educated people being active in their communities.
Let me go this way.
Again, we have Mark Flanders here. And being educated to me means to be educated, to be a human being, to be able to function in society, to be able to give back to society, to be able to have a job, and to be human and to be civil with other people and other human beings. And we need a quality education for everybody, from every area, from every part of the city. I think it should be equal opportunity for everybody, no matter where you come from. And that's my belief.
Great. So we'll swing over here.
So I'm Kelly Thomas again. Being educated to me means basically having knowledge of everything around you. It doesn't necessarily mean, like that gentleman said, having a degree or going through the grades, going through the motions. It's being knowledgeable about how to live with one another, being social, learning from everybody else, not necessarily just learning what you learn. You can teach people and be educated that way. People can learn from you and become educated that way also. So being educated is kind of what you put into it. So that's what educated means to me.
Yep, we'll just keep coming across.
All right, John DePietro, and Dave gave the right answer. It's about preparing kids to be productive citizens. And that obviously means a lot of things, but I guess what I would add to that is I have a concern that there's a little bit too much focus on college and career readiness, especially in the early grades. I mean, I think we're taking it to an absurd level sometimes when we're talking about college and career readiness in kindergarten and first grade. So I think that we need to have a focus, especially at those early ages, on a more rounded kid. Socialization, playing, being active, and social skills, creating well-rounded, productive citizens, because again, not everybody's going to go to college, and I'll bet Jimmy picks that baton up.
Thank you. Lisa Freeman. I would say that John DePietro stole a little bit of my thunder. Being an occupational therapist, I do understand what it means to treat and look at people holistically, and being educated means that you are a well-rounded person. It doesn't necessarily equate to book knowledge. It equates to being able to move through life in a productive manner. So being educated also means being educated and pointed in the right direction to seek answers when you don't have them. So being educated all in all does mean that you should give back to your community, but being a well-rounded person with lots of interests as opposed to one set of interests definitely makes you an educated person.
Jimmy LaHoo. Being educated to me is someone that is willing to learn, but also willing to teach what they know. Some of my biggest influences dropped out of school. They have a 7th, 8th grade education, but they taught me more about life and more about my role in society as a father, as a parent. So I think being educated is being a well-rounded person, and also being competent in the skills that you choose to use in any career you pick in life, whether that be a welder or whether that be a doctor. If you're competent and you're helping people and you're doing good things for the community, I think you're well educated.
I have to say, everybody here gave pretty much all the answers, but being educated is to be a productive member of society, but also I think having common sense has a lot to do with, you can have all the alphabet soup after your name, but if you don't have common sense, that means a lot. So hopefully, part of your education would getting some common sense also.
Thank you. I'm Mary Georges again. What I represent Ward 3, because I didn't say before. What I can say myself for educated, I can say my father didn't go to school, but my father was really with his passion to put his children to go to school, because he said he doesn't know how to read and write, but he wanted his children to know how to read and write, because they can help him to read the letter. And for me, education is learning, is teaching, to prepare someone that what you get, how I can prepare somebody else. I came here, if it was not education, I don't know if I couldn't stand where I am. But this is the key, education. That for me, I know is, you can say knowledge, learning, teaching, and understanding. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Leslie Want, Ward 4, and I get the benefit of having listened to everybody else before I have to say anything. So I guess I'd start with what I think education is not. And I do not think that education is about seat time. So I think we should be past the time when education is you spend a certain amount of time in a certain grade. I think we need to be starting to look at things like MST does and like over at Parker Brownie, where they're looking at competencies. And we're looking at students, have they achieved the competencies, the things in the curriculum that we're looking for them to understand, like being able to read or be able to do math and really basic stuff. So what I would like to see, what I think education is that model of where we're able to have a multi-grade level classrooms, and we're moving kids along according to whether or not they've achieved the actual learning. And if they've done that, and particularly in this model, they learn how to teach themselves, and that's the ultimate in education, is when a person can teach themselves. Thank you.
So if we want to change up the format a little bit, I'll just offer that to you, because maybe it gets a little bit redundant if the same question goes all the way through. If someone feels like they want to pass, I think that we can say, don't feel bad. You can just say, like, okay, it's been covered. We'll move on to the next one. And then that way I'll just keep feeding you guys as many questions as I get up here. So we'll start with you again, since you got to go last time. How about this?
Okay.
What do you consider the greatest challenge for the MSD, and what will you do about it?
I think the greatest challenge
And let me just, I'm going to add one, I'm going to combine some of these too.
Okay.
Because it also says, like, what specific policies would you promote as a school board member to help, with that? So.
Okay, so again, Leslie Wan from Ward 4, and I think our greatest challenge in the Manchester Schools District is class size. And I think that can definitely be dealt with policy. We've done it before where we've put a maximum number of students per class. I just think we need to lower that. And research has shown, particularly in city districts or urban districts, that lower class size makes a huge difference in outcomes for students. So that would be my number one, would be lowering class size, and I think it's achievable. Thank you.
We're going to go this way this time, though.
Oh,
How about that?
all right.
Just trying to mix it
There
up
we
on
go.
you guys. I don't want anybody to get
Yeah,
too
yeah.
comfortable up there,
I
right?
can represent. I want to.
So do you want me to repeat that question?
Yeah.
So the question is, so what do you consider the greatest challenge for the Manchester School District, and what will you do about it? And they're looking for some specific policies in another question as well.
I think so for me, for the school, class size is very important first, because we know we are struggling with that problem. And for the policy, what I can say, if we go, we can make it a policy what that is good for all the students to have a class size like we say, if you have a 25, it's gonna just be 25. If we say inside the class we need 25 to 30, that is the limit. We cannot pass the limit for what we already put as a policy. Thank you.
So Rich, you wanna, and you may just want to introduce yourself. You're a little late.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rich Gerard. I represent the school board at large. And I apologize for being late, but the television show I host each week doesn't wrap up until 7 o'clock. It starts at 6, so I get here as soon as I could. I think the biggest challenge or problem facing the district is the conduct of members of the board. And I say that without reservation. I've watched the board for many years, and I can't say that I'm surprised, but there has been a willful ignoring of fact. There has been an unprecedented, I think, level of personal venom, people with their spite-filled attacks, and it comes at the expense of having the discussions that this board needs to have on the issues facing the district. And I think what people need to do is put whatever personal gripes or grievances they have aside. I think they need to keep their eyes on the facts. I think they need to focus on the issues. I think they need to learn to disagree without being disagreeable, and to stop making everything into some sort of personal vendetta, so that the dialogue, and people frankly need to stop making things up, so that the dialogue can be based on those factors that will actually lead to policy and not lead to personal attack.
Great, thank you.
I think one of the biggest challenges, and we have several, is the enrollment decline of our student population, especially in our high schools. We had over 7,000 high school students a decade ago. We're down to about 3,700. Until we face the fact that we cannot continue to retain the amount of square footage in these buildings for the reduction of our student population, we're going to continue to be into these budget crunches. I believe that we should be looking at consolidating buildings or repurposing some of our buildings so that we can use those resources to lower class sizes and to get math curriculum and other things that we need in the district. But as long as we want to continue to retain the square footage we have with the declining enrollment, we're going to continue going down the same road.
Jimmy LaHoo, Ward 8. For me, it's a little different. I think the biggest issue here is this one-size-fits-all mentality, and that every child's going to go to higher education. I think that we need to gear our kids for life by teaching them business, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and a little bit of personal finance. I think kids go into make decisions early on in life that create debt, and they have no idea what they're really getting into. So I would create policy that would support those things that I believe.
Thank you. Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. There are some great answers here, and there are a few I would like to expand on, but one of the biggest issues I think we face is parental involvement in this district, and how to get the parents more on board with what's going on in the district, and how to voice their concerns or voice their pleasure on what they see going on. In order for our district to be successful, we have to have all stakeholders involved, and I think that's one of our biggest challenges. I also think that class sizes are an issue naturally, but I'll agree with Mr. Beaudry that we have untapped resources right now, but we can't continue down the same road we have been. We have to look at what we have to work with, and how to consolidate our efforts in order to get the biggest bang for our buck at this point. We're not the only city that's experiencing the decline in enrollment either, so it's not exclusive to Manchester or even New Hampshire, and I really think we need to take a long, hard look at that.
John DePietro, Ward 6. I would agree with many of the comments that have been made, but what I will focus on that I think is a big challenge is institutional inertia, meaning people don't want to change. I get to visit Parker Varney for 45 minutes this morning and saw a great example of what happens when you can overcome that inertia. And what it also did, to some of the comments that have been made so far, is it really underscored to me and exemplified what you can do with instructional reform as opposed to just throwing money at something. What they've done there is showing extraordinary results, and I want to support more efforts like that, and I want to put policies in place that are going to help grease the skids for more institutional change like I saw this morning.
Kelly Thomas, Ward 12. The two issues that I've been hearing about lately is class size, that a couple of them touched upon already. It can be difficult for a teacher to basically touch on every student in the class and have enough time for every student in the class, because there's quite a bit of students in each class. The other issue that I've been hearing about is children who are kind of behind in a class are not getting the help that they need to kind of move forward and become on the same level as the other children in the class. So as much as they're kind of trucking along, they're still kind of lagging behind. So they're kind of, a little lost. So I'd like to see, more help in the classroom and, class size kind of going down a little bit.
Come on all the way over here.
stole their microphone.
No problem. We share, right? We share this.
Mark Flanders again. All good answers, and in particular arts, I just want to expand upon that a little bit. I believe redistricting and funding will tie into what Art said. And I think we can achieve more funding by better management. I think consolidation of resources, in particular benefits, health insurance, IT, HR, private sector, nonprofit. I think we can get some partnerships to get additional funding. But until we redistrict, nothing's going to happen. Until we redistrict, it's going to be the same old thing. So let's get it done.
David Scanlon, Ward 2, and I should have said earlier, I unfortunately have to leave at about 8 o'clock. I have a class that I'm part of a group presentation in, and my professor gracefully allowed me to push it off a bit, so I apologize. I'm going to have to leave it at that time. I would say making the Manchester School District a safe place for innovation is the key to its future. And I know some people, there's a term out there about, data-driven best practices. I think a better way of saying that, I think someone else says it a lot here, is that, in God we trust, but everyone else brings data. And if you can bring the data, other people are doing it out there. If you can bring the data that demonstrates that this has worked in other places, let's do that without some of, I don't want to say the bureaucratic oversight, because the people in the central office, I think, do a very good job and are very understaffed at what they do. But even, sort of board encouragement and, creating an atmosphere in which teachers are going to be able to do the things that they know need to be done in order to make all the metrics that they have to make. So innovation, I think, is making it a safe place is a very, very important issue in our district.
Great. Well, thank you for those answers. You guys are very prompt on the time. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's change gears a little bit. We'll start to drill down on some specific policies. And so we're going to start out with what some might refer to as the elephant in the room, but let's talk about choice and choice options in the state for students. So, Joe, you want to start with that one?
I think,
John.
I think,
John, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
I'll get all the candidates by the end of the night.
I think choice is the great equalizer, right? I think that in institutions, government institutions in particular, right, where you don't really have competition, there's not a very strong impetus to change. So I think choice introduces that, but what it also does, to Jimmy's point earlier about not having a one-size-fits-all, it introduces more options for kids who might learn differently, thrive in different environments, or be looking to just pursue different paths in life. And having school choice gives kids that flexibility, and I think if you're looking to equal the playing field socioeconomically, there's no better way to do that than to give poor kids a choice to go to the school that they want to go to.
We're going to go this way. We'll come across.
Thank you. Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. I'm going to expand on what Mr. DePietro just said. I'm all for school choice, and one of the reasons is Ward 5 is, without a doubt, the largest recipient of free and reduced lunches and refugee students in the city. Given that, I would like nothing better to see those children and their parents make a decision on where they would like to go to school in the city. I think sometimes when you don't allow children to experience other environments, you limit them. You pigeonhole them into one system for all and hope that it works. I really would like nothing better than to see some of those children go scattered to the four corners of Manchester and pick what public school they'd like to go to, what elementary school they'd like to go to. I think in that way we are definitely freeing up the system to do what it needs to do, having people engaged because they chose to be there. If I have to go to a doctor's appointment and I really don't want to go, how invested am I going to be in that? So I think school choice is a win-win situation for the community as well as the parents and the students.
Jimmy LaHoo, Ward 8. School choice is a must if, as Dave said, if we're going to innovate and be innovative, then we need school choice. Dr. Vargas, as we know, is doing fantastic, well on his way to starting private partnerships with our public schools, CMC being a great one. Memorial doesn't benefit, Central doesn't benefit, West does. Well, a student from Memorial should be able to go there if they're interested. And as we expand on those private partnerships, you know, each school may become innovative in its own way. And I think the parents and the kids should choose where they want to go.
Choice is, I'm not sure if you're looking at choice within our district or choice within the city, but.
You decide.
Well, I don't have a problem where a parent wants to send their child. My philosophical issue is where the money goes. We fund public education. If a parent wants to send their child somewhere else, that should be on their dime, in my opinion. We want to fund public education. If the money is taken away from public education to go to private schools, I have a concern with that because they do have a choice. And the choice is, let's build up our public schools so they are the best in the country. But when I hear that charter schools, we have to pay for their special ed, we have to pay for their transportation, but yet they get more money per student than the public schools do, I have a concern with that. And that's my only concern I have with choice. Keep the money in the public schools. If a parent chooses to do something else, then that should be their choice. Thank you.
Which means that only wealthy parents can make choices, but I'm not going to go down that road because I have a different answer. And that is this. I mean, choice is about options. Someone said earlier that one of the biggest problems facing this district is you don't have parental involvement. That's because parents have no decisions to make. If parents had decisions to make, they'd be more involved. And whether it's the ability to choose what fourth grade teacher your kid's going to have at their elementary school, determine what elementary school they might want to go to. The more you give people options to choose from, the more involved by definition they are going to be because they have to be, because someone's going to ask them what they want to do, right? So I think that we already have school choice in Manchester, at least at one level, right? It's called the School of Technology. Nobody's districted there. And why do people go there? They go there because there is a unique option that fills a need for many kids. And so when we take a look at what West is doing with the Barr Foundation and the potential to reinvent high school there, maybe kids from other schools get to go there. Maybe it's a template to reform those other schools to provide more options so that kids can decide between multiple options. Someone mentioned Parker Varney. Gee, maybe my kid would do well in that environment, but maybe my other kid might do well at Smith Road School with what they do. You give people options, let them choose, you'll find that the schools will take care of themselves. You won't have to worry about the quality of the work being done.
Thank you. I'm Mary Georges, Ward 3. For me, for the choice, I can say this, my option is in a high school. From elementary to middle school, we can just make it because we provide transportation. I would like they can stay where they are, because for transportation that can make it more trouble with the school district for transportation to bring the kids west side, east side, this one. But for high school, that is my option for choice, because we don't provide the transportation for high school. We can make the high school to become managed school. Like we have a Manchester Technology, we can have west side to make like a STEAM, music, everything. We can just put like a central, become like a, we can just make it like an option with all those high school, with agreement of parent, because I like a parent to be involved for everything. If that one is something, that's what I can think parent to think about that.
Hi, Leslie Want, Ward 4. School choice is an interesting topic, and I have to say that I am definitely all for school choice. I wasn't always, but I had a friend who son went to Central, and he just suffered. And then he got out of Central, which is too big and too overwhelming for him. And he got into a charter school, and he hasn't looked back, and he's doing beautifully. So our schools aren't one size fits all. There are charter schools out there that help kids. And although I agree with Art, the public dollars are incredibly important. I worry about school choice when people talk about vouchers. I'd love to see every kid be able to go to whatever school they want to go to, but what I worry about is when we talk about giving a certain amount of money to kids to go to school so they can choose, because the kid down on Beach Street, giving him or her $5,000 to go to school is not going to get him into Trinity, we all know that, or the Dairyfield School. So school choice has to really be school choice, and it has to be equitable for everyone. Thank you.
Hi, David Scannell, Ward 2. I'm unabashedly a public school person for the reasons that I stated earlier. It's the crucible of our democracy. And particularly at Central High School, but even in the school that I teach in now, Life's Rich pageant walks through my door every single day. They are kids of all different colors, sizes, races, religions, and they come together and they cooperate and they learn and they go out into the community and they replicate what they've done there. If we balkanize our schools and if we encourage people through the tuition vouchers or whatever you want to call them to go elsewhere, and we undercut our public schools, the most critical institutions in each of our hometown, then we're doing a great disservice not only to those children, but also to our democracy. Having said that, within the district, let's give them something to choose. MST has got a number of wonderful programs. I think it's underutilized. So many kids talk to me about doing something in the media, television production, journalism, advertising. We don't do enough. Theater arts. There are so many things that we could make literally magnets, attractions. We have to do more of that, but it is within the context of our public schools.
Hi, Mark Flanders again. I think choices is a good option. It simply creates competition, and competition makes you better. And without competition, things become stagnant. I think that we should certainly look at choice and not totally go into it all the way, but I think it's a great option, and I think it should be looked at and considered, and I'm all for it, because I think it's going to make for a better educational product. And this one size fits all doesn't always work, in my opinion. Thank you.
Kelly Thomas, Ward 12. I want to I'm all for choice. I want to hit on what Rich said about parent involvement. I totally agree that if, parents had a right to choose for their child, seeing as though they are the ones who know their child the most, I think there would be a lot more involvement, a lot more, satisfied parents, as well as, children wanting to go to the school that they're going to. Because not every child wants to go to the school that they're at. And it's very tough because when you're in a district, you're going to this school or this school and that's it. I like how there's, a couple other schools such as MST that give you the skills that you need. I went there, I graduated from there. I loved it. It definitely does give you, the skills that you need in the outside world that, a normal high school might not. So I'm definitely for choice.
Great, so I have another, I'm staying on the same topic. We're going to have a lightning round. You guys ready for a lightning round?
Yeah.
No, they don't get a minute. They just get one word. It's a yes or a no. That's all you get. You don't, no explanation needed. And you can clarify in your next question, okay? You're interested in this one, right? Okay, Mark, so we're going to let you start.
Decision-making, that's what it's all about.
Okay, if choice meant Manchester paying for children going to Pinkerton, Bedford, or Dairyfield, what would your position be?
Yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 Okay. Now we're gonna have a little fun. Sorry, just gotta mix it up a little bit. No, that wasn't the fun. We're gonna have another lightning round for you guys. And we're just getting warmed up, right? Yes, there we go. Okay, in one word, you get one strength that you bring. One word to tell us a strength that you possess that you're going to bring to the board.
Who starts?
Oh, yeah, I got to ask somebody, don't I?
I'll start.
Okay, go ahead, Art.
Determination.
Oh,
We'll go left. My left.
Innovative.
Humor.
Maturity.
Responsiveness.
Management.
Understanding.
Advocacy.
I was trying to say that. I like it.
Two of you, you can.
Motivation.
Focus.
Focus. Okay. All right, let's dig into a very specific and concrete problem in the district right now. Let's talk, and so Lisa, we're going to start with you, and we're going to go that way. I'm trying to balance this out and do the same thing I started you guys before. Okay, how do you plan to address the current lack of cohesive math curriculum in the district?
Oh.
In 60 seconds, no problem.
Yeah, honestly, if anyone's been following the school board for the past 2 years, this is all we have been screaming about is the lack of math curriculum. So how I would address it first off is we need to find a math curriculum that's going to work for these children. As soon as we find that, and I would say ASAP, then naturally we'll bring to the teachers to review because I'm not an educator. I don't profess to be an educator. So the normal procedure would to be find a math curriculum that's going to suit these children. We want the teachers to review it, make sure it's going to work for them as well. Bring it to curriculum instruction, and let's get it going. I mean, you know what? There's no time like yesterday. It's time. Enough. We've got a problem. We need to deal with it ASAP.
I think we need a short-term solution and a long-term solution, and the short-term would be to find something that we know that works, and there are plenty of them out there. Massachusetts had great math standards and curricula that we know worked. So I would say that would be the short-term solution. Longer term, I mentioned before that I've been a volunteer leader for a professional association. One of our main missions is developing standards in industrial control systems. And that is a grassroots effort where the professionals on a volunteer basis get together and develop these standards and vote on them. I would like to see that kind of effort done, not just necessarily in the city of Manchester, but in the state of New Hampshire and across the country, where we empower teachers, give them the tools they need to develop these standards, vote on them, and keep them up to date over time. So long term, that's what I would like to see happen with academic standards.
I'm going to touch on what Lisa said, Kelly Thomas, Ward 12. I also think that a math curriculum needs to be brought that, you know, every child will be able to learn from, because math is very difficult to learn. And what I'm hearing lately is it's very difficult for the parents. When homework is brought home by these children, it's very difficult for the parents to even understand the curriculum. I have 2 children at Northwest who are 7, and they bring home math homework, and I have no idea how to do it anymore. So it's very difficult. You know, you're trying to teach them the math that you learned back then, and it's just not the same anymore. So I want to see a math curriculum that is just across the board. Every child will be able to, you know, learn kind of easily from it. Also the teachers, they need to be able to teach it.
Mark Flanders, Ward 4. I'm probably older than most of you here, and whatever happened to the old way of doing it? You know, my kids, they went to Weston and now at Central. I saw the multitude of ways of doing math, which just amazed me. I don't understand why this just can't be standardized like it was and have the teachers teach. Is it the teachers that aren't teaching and the kids not getting it? I don't understand. Let's go back to the old ways and teach math the way it was meant to be taught.
Yeah, I agree that helping a student with math homework is a very difficult endeavor. There are a number of publications out there, publishing firms that put out math series that have in each of their worksheets a parent corner, which gives one introduction to sort of a how-to. There's a step-by-step example. I do think, I don't want to impose too much on teachers that's not specific to what they know works and whatnot, but that a list or a set of problems should not go home without that parent corner. And this is something that is ubiquitous in a number of the latest math texts. I'm not going to supplant their wisdom with my own wisdom. I was not a good math student, but I do believe that we've got to bridge the parent-school gap when it comes to math, because I think that's where a large part of the resistance comes from, a lack of not ability to understand on behalf of the parents, but they need to be brought into the process a lot more.
Leslie Want, Ward 4, and I think this has been going on for years, and I think one of the things is that we have so many different schools, and every school is doing a different thing, and it wasn't intentional, but I do think, given that it has happened that way, we have one school that's getting fabulous results, and I keep saying Parker Varney, Parker Varney, Parker Varney, but I think we need to look at a program that has results. And Parker Varney's getting outstanding results. So I would like to see what they're doing. They use this iReady program. It involves computers. I know the kids love, I volunteer 3 times a week in a 5th grade classroom. And the kids love it when we get the computers out. That is where they're at. And I think they can learn a lot of math on those computers. And that's how Parker Varney's doing. I would look at that and go from there. Thank you.
If there is something that is going wrong, if a parent cannot help the children, myself, I struggle to help my daughter with math, because sometimes I was not understand the math, what they was doing. And I know when I was in school, I love math. What I can say, if all the people are talking, why not to bring a change? That way we're supposed to work, do the strategic plan about the curriculum with the math, for us to looking for what is the good plan we're supposed to take for our for the school, for the student to learn math, if because something is difficult. That is we need to bring a change. That's why we need to do the research.
Before you can solve the problem, you have to understand what caused it. And back when the city adopted the Manchester academic standards, it came up with what it called the standards-based curriculum. What the board didn't understand at the time, because the administration didn't tell it, was that they were going to completely do away with the elementary math program, which was a bad one. It was everyday math, but nonetheless, it was an academic system that everybody knew was there. So they got rid of the math program in favor of this standards-based curriculum, where resources were recommended to the teachers, but basically the teachers were told they could do whatever they wanted in the classroom so long as they were meeting the pacing guides that the district put out about when math was supposed to be learned by what period of time, and were making sure the kids were hitting the standards. That's what you have to correct. So we've been working on this in the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Dr. Vargas has got a working group. But, you know, we need to look at history. Everyday math was brought in by the teachers, the experts. It was a complete disaster. Parents were left out of the loop. The business community was left out of the loop. Higher education was left out of the loop. All of the people that should have input to know what kids should be learning in their elementary and secondary education, so that when they leave, they're functional either for college or career. I hate to use those terms together these days. But that's what you have to do. The Manchester academic standards have to go. And then we need to determine what the best way forward for math is, and then do what we need to take care of that program.
I have to say, Rich took a lot of what I was going to say, but for the time that I've been on the board, Common Core Math was the big thing, best thing since sliced bread. And we paid thousands of dollars for the curriculum. We bought books. And a short time later, all of a sudden, that math was not good enough. Common Core came in. Then we started working on the Common Core standards, which now are the Manchester Academic Standards, which are basically 90% of the Common Core. And when I go around the schools and I hear 2 third-grade teachers saying that one is teaching, they're still teaching everyday math, and the other teacher is pulling math off of the internet to go by the Manchester Academic Standards. And I had asked if the students were to swap classes, could they hit the ground running? And the answer was no. So we've been told for the last 3 years that we had a math curriculum out there, and we found out just about 3 months ago that we didn't have a math curriculum out there. And I have to applaud Committeeman Langton as the chairman of the C&I committee that has been pushing to get a math curriculum along with the rest of the committee, the members on that committee. So we're not there yet, but we were sold a bill of goods, in my opinion, when it comes to the math curriculum.
Jimmy LaHoo, Ward 8. That's me again. Everybody pretty much said it. I agree with a lot of what they said. I'm going to spare everyone a minute of their life and move on to the next question.
Okay, great. So we're going to shift a little bit again, and I'll give you kind of a big question, and then we're going to drill down on this in a little bit more detail. But many of you have mentioned parent involvement. What does parent involvement look like, and how would you promote it in the city, and be specific? So we're going to start, Art, and we're going to go that way.
Parent involvement has been a topic since I've been on the board. How do you get parents involved? If somebody can give me that answer, I would love to run with it, because we have tried. We have PTA, PTG, PTO groups. I've attended some of the meetings. You know, they have a good group of people showing up, but it's not every parent in the district. And I don't know what we can do to entice some of the parents. I know some of the, and I don't want to use lower income, that don't have transportation or may not be able to get to the schools. They have to work. There's a lot of parents now that both parents are working, so it's difficult for a parent to participate in their child's education. But that has been a problem for quite some time, and I honestly don't have an answer how to get them more involved. But if anybody out in the audience has an answer, I would love to hear it, so we can indoctrinate a policy so that we can get the parents more involved, because it does help the students tremendously.
I'll tell you what parent involvement is not. My first month on the board, we had a curriculum and instruction committee meeting, and at that meeting, a curriculum, what was it called? Curriculum review guide, I think it was called, was brought before the committee. And it addressed the role of the parent, which was basically to show up to open houses and report to the school anything that the school needed to know about their kid. That was the defined role of the parent. That has been sitting on the table for 2 years now, because it will not make it out of committee. So Parker Varney, which has been mentioned a lot tonight, has got a phenomenally engaged group of parents that is probably as broad, if not broader, than any school in the district. And the reason for that is they started changing what they were doing in the classrooms, and because what they were doing in the classrooms was different, parents needed to be brought up to speed, they needed to be involved. Their buy-in was necessary for the success of the program. So my answer on parent involvement is really simple. School districts, and it's not local to Manchester, have a very limited and isolated role for parents, which involves showing up at open houses because they view parents as unqualified to participate in the education of their kids. So once you admit that parents have a role to play, and that role involves understanding what's going on in classrooms, being able to opt their kids out, whether if it's a non-academic survey or an objectionable lesson, be able to know what's going to happen in the classroom beforehand, so that if they have questions, they can ask them, and otherwise make them meaningful partners by giving them options and choices. That is what will bring parent involvement to the schools, and Parker Varney has actually proven that.
That's a good one. Because I love a parent to be involved. Parent involvement, I can just give example for Patrice Bernard, who's over there in the back. I think so. When I decided to go even run for school board, because I hear her saying in the school board, we need more mother, women in the school board, because they need to stand for for the student. And for the redistricting, did I see how parent was really involved to make a decision what was the best? When they make it just to say, we're going to close, they bring a plan was to close a memorial. I saw how many parents was inside the room to come to speak, because parents know more about their children. And I know there is a parent to always be at school to help for what gone, sometimes for just make it like a bake sale, or they always do all those things. And the parents know more. Why not make them inside the decision making? That's where I am with a parent. Any decision making, they need to accept or not, or yes or no.
Leslie Mott, Ward 4. I think we've really hit on it here tonight. I think if we're going to ask parents to be involved, we have a lot of parents in this district who work 2 jobs, a lot of parents who work long, long days, and when they get out of work, and if we're going to ask them to come into our schools and be active parents and to participate in whatever we have going on, we have to make sure whatever we're asking them to come to is really worth their while. In other words, when we ask them to come, that we're engaging them and we're asking them what they think, and we want to get information from them about their students. So I think we really are kind of all saying the same thing there. If we're want parents to be engaged, we have to give them a role, and we have to give them an important role. Their time is very valuable. Thank you.
We have to be able to look outside our own district for solutions. There are many models of parent involvement out there in districts with demographic challenges in which they get parents in and they get them doing real decision-making. There's a model out there in the Boston school system of parent advisory councils that pass opinions on any policy that comes before the school board. There's no reason we wouldn't be able to do that now. Now, would it carry the weight of law? No, but it would carry significant weight if a group of parents said, here's the way the policy should read. Here are the practical implications in my house of this policy. But it takes the ability of the district to reach out and organize those parents in order to do that. And we have some parent involvement coordinators. We don't have enough. We've decimated our social work corps, the people who go into the homes and, bring the schools to the parent. That's something else that we would really need to look at. And I know I'm over my time, but I do have to leave right now. I just want to thank the organizers, John in particular, the commissioner. I've enjoyed this very much. October 26th, a student group is going to be doing something similar at UNH Manchester from 6 to 8, part of the Granite State Organizing Project. So I am sure if you want more of this, come there then, and I look forward to seeing as many of you there at that time. So I have to take my leave. Thank you very much.
David, thank you for joining us, even if you had to cut yourself short. And we have a new entry, so tag. David's out, and Ross is in. So Ross, take just a moment to introduce yourself, and then the question before us. You have a 1-minute response time.
Sure. So Ross, sorry, go ahead.
So I'll read you the question, and then you can do it all at once. So many of you have mentioned parent involvement. What does parent involvement look like, and how would you promote it in the city? Be specific.
Okay. Ross Terrio, School Board Ward 7. I apologize for being late. My son's going for his license, so we're trying to get the 40 hours up, so that's why we had a death ride before I got
here. You're not even shaking,
though. So the reason why parent involvement is so important, and just let me go off on a tangent a little bit. I would love to have more money for the Manchester School District, but money isn't the end-all and be-all. The reason why parent involvement is so important, if we look at, and it's not a complete predictor, but if we look at children who are successful, who go on to college, who do well in school, there is a common denominator, and that is a 2-parent household, parents who have graduated high school and gone on to higher education, and parents who are above the poverty level. And that's why parent involvement is so important, because it's a huge predictor of success for our children. It's kind of sad, but and I don't have the answers, but how do we impress upon parents that their involvement is the major reason why their children are going to do good in school, good in life, and good in college? I guess that's all I'd have to say on that subject.
Mark Flanders again, Ward 4. Tough question, and like Ross said, tough one to answer. I got 2 kids in high school. I'm living a dream of parent involvement. It's very difficult, extremely difficult. How do you get other parents to get involved is the big question, and how do you answer that? I think if you get them involved in the decision-making, and that's easier said than done, that's the answer to your question, but how do you do that? I don't have the answer for that, but I think you should be able to promote it through either the internet, outreach programs. It's a tough question, yes. How do you get, like Ross said, you got a variety of types of families, single families. How do you get these people involved? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. I struggle with myself with my own, just pushing them and being involved, and it's draining. But I think that the simple and the short answer is let them get involved in the decision-making.
Come all the way over here.
I also believe that it is a very tough question. Parent involvement, it can be very tough. I'm a single mother of 2. I work over 40 hours a week, and doing extra things with the children, of course I do. But it's very hard sometimes. A lot of things are, while I'm working, which I can't get to if I have clients. And a lot of things are after work when my children need to do their homework, or I want to cook them a nice meal. I want to get them to bed on time. So that kind of stuff, is, not so good. But if you wanted to get parents involved, maybe if you need to have something about curriculum or something is going on at school, invite them for a dinner. At school, you have churches who have like spaghetti dinners. If it's during, dinner time, have an incentive of them coming and having dinner, and you can still have that family time. Decisions that parents can make, I think, is really big. Because if you didn't have any decisions to make about your children, then why would you want to be involved? So.
John DePietro, Ward 6. It's a little bit of an obscure reference, but if any of you have ever read the book Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or seen the movie, there's a joke about how the answer to everything is 42. Well, it feels a little bit tonight like the answer to everything is Parker Varney. And so I would argue we've seen it, like a couple of candidates have already mentioned. And again, just not to repeat myself, but this morning talking to Principal Allen, that was one of the things that she mentioned more than once is the parental involvement has skyrocketed at that school. What I will say is, I've been talking to a lot of teachers. I spent several hours with one particular teacher about a month ago, and I asked her, I said, if there's one magic wand you could wave to fix education, what would it be? And she said, well, we can't really do anything about it, but it's parents. Her big concern was she sees parents in 2 increasingly large groups. One are the helicopter parents that are way too involved, and the other are the ones that don't show up at all. But to my earlier point, I think the cure to that is what's been mentioned, and it's involving the parents in the decisions. It's doing what they're doing at Parker Varney.
So Amy Allen is going to be very happy about this.
Yeah.
Lisa, go ahead.
Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. I don't know if I was a helicopter parent. I don't think I was.
I would never say that about you.
Thank you. I was a very involved parent because I have a child who's a grown man now with Asperger's. So I became involved because he was unable to advocate for himself on so many different levels. But the one thing that kept me coming back to the school and being involved, even if it was not a positive thing, was the response I got from the teachers and the staff. So I think sometimes when people may think that parents are being ambivalent about their child's education, that ambivalence is in fact not ambivalence, but a fear of not understanding what the teacher may be saying to them, not being able to create a dialogue with that teacher because that teacher's very well educated and that parent may not be. So I think, tearing down some of those barriers may draw more parents in. When I was in college, one of my professors gave me a big lecture about, I was doing some treatments, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't want to work with me anymore. And she taught me something very profound. She said, Lisa, some will, some won't. So what? Move on. And while that may sound cruel, it made a lot of sense. If you tear down some of those barriers, you will get parents in, but there are some parents who are never going to feel comfortable being involved. But we have to try somewhere. And I think right now is the time to do that.
2 years ago, I actually started this journey getting school board. I actually started a group to look into if we could do a subcommittee at the board level. It got great response. We actually met a few times. Unfortunately or fortunately, 2/3 of the people that were in the group are running for office. At the time, it wasn't that, so it was working great. We had great ideas. I did not want it to become a political issue. Parental involvement is extremely important. So we basically just disbanded. If I was on the school board, I would definitely push to have some type of subcommittee and continue that journey from 2 years ago. But I guess the big question for me, parental involvement, is what does that look like? Again, like the students, parents, not one size fits all. Some parents will show up at PTGs. Some parents will just speak with the teacher. I think what we need to do as a school district is make any possible way of getting to the teacher, to the parent possible, through technology, through emails, through Aspen. Just because they're not showing up, dancing, and having a parade doesn't mean they're not involved with their child. I think we just need to make it as easy as possible as a district to communicate with our parents.
Great. Okay, we're going to change topics a little bit now, go a little bit deeper. This one's to you, Rich. How much do you know about the special education process, and what steps are being taken to ensure that special education needs are being met in the public and charter schools? What's that?
Mary asked to read it again.
Oh, no problem. Okay.
Don't
So
start
what
my
do you know
clock yet,
about?
John.
So how much do you know about special education? So basically, I think that the question is just broad, like here's my context, and then I'm just kind of pulling a couple of similar questions together. So I think he can answer one answer, can answer both of these. It says, what steps are being taken to ensure that special education needs are being met in the public schools and in the charter schools?
Well, I am fortunate that I've been invited by a parent who's just started the special education process with their child at one of our schools to sit in on the process. So I'm actually learning very firsthand about the steps in identifying, which has been sort of an eye-opening thing for me. My involvement thus far as a board member with special ed, aside from fielding complaints about parents, between that and buses, it's 90% of my complaints, has largely been from the subcommittee of finance as the chairman. We have had some really difficult issues with cost overruns in our special ed line items, and they haven't been small. And there's been a failure of the administration to be able to account for those things in real time. They can't give actual data. They can't tell us if there are more kids this year than last year. They can't tell us if we're even taking more bus trips this year than last year. And so from an administrative point of view, that has been my focus, because if the system can't report data in real time, then how are we going to be actually able to assess whether or not the services being provided are necessary, are appropriate, or even being delivered? So I have kind of a split answer there. I'm learning at the ground level, but I'm dealing with some of the financial structural management issues, which thankfully Dr. Vargas has a very good understanding of and is doing a lot of work to correct in a very short period of time.
Art, we're going to go your direction. Get some time.
What I know about special ed is that the IEP team has full control over the progress of that child, or as far as the IEP of that child. And from my understanding, management, the principals, administrators cannot get involved in the decision-making of the IEP team. And they always look for the best interest of the child. The concern that I have in our district, I think that we are a little bit too restrictive on some of the IEPs. I believe there's some students that should be outsourced, would be beneficial to the student. But in my opinion, because of money, we don't outsource them. We try to keep them in-house, and I don't think it's good for the student. I don't think it's good for the teacher. I sit on the Safety Review Committee. I see so many injuries caused by students to our teachers. And I think a lot of that is because we are not prepared to handle some of the disabilities that come before our school district. And a lot of that has to do with training too. We don't give the adequate training to our teachers or our paraprofessionals to deal with the type of disabilities they're going to go into. And I've seen it on several occasions where we'll put a paraprofessional in a situation that she or he does not have the training to handle that child, but yet they're put into that situation. And again, that's not good for the child or the student or the teacher.
What I know from regarding that is I have a couple friends and how frustrated they are with the red tape in the system. They're constantly fighting for their child. You want to talk about parental involvement. That's the ultimate parental involvement. So I think it's frustrating from a state funding level. I think more can be done in that aspect, but I'm certainly ready to dive in, learn about the process a lot more, be involved in the process. So I'm ready to take on that role.
Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. So this has been a pet project of mine since I got on the school board. I actually, we formed a special committee on special education. Unfortunately, again, it's fallen by the wayside because we no longer have a special education director in the district. However, what I know about special education, you could fill this room with. I do know that, unfortunately, it's an ever-evolving system that doesn't really have any end in sight, it doesn't have a jumping off point. We seem to be reinventing it every 5 years. What I do know about special ed is that if the parents aren't involved, they can quickly be gobbled up, and that's a concern for me. For any student who has generated an IEP, if there's a diagnosis that's generated an IEP, getting that child what they need in order to be successful should be the primary focus of everyone. It's like when you go car shopping. You buy the cheapest car, you buy the most expensive car. Well, if the most expensive car is going to last you 5 times as long as the cheap car, then you go with the most expensive car. The cheap comes out expensive. If we're trying to save $1 at the beginning of this process and end up spending thousands at the end of it, who won? No one. The family didn't win. The child didn't win. I think that some of the laws around special education are just so prohibitive for people to understand that you think they're doing the right thing and we find out we're doing the wrong thing. So again, it's an ever-evolving thing. I'll continue to make special ed my project, my pet project. And before I was on the school board, I did a lot of parent advocacy work, and I'm glad I did because those parents really need to understand what their role is as well as what the school is.
So one of the things I know about special ed is there's a lot more I need to know about special ed. I know it's a huge responsibility of the district. It's very intricate. There are a lot of different types. I did have 2 daughters that had special ed services. One had an IEP. And we spent, and when I say we, I mean my wife, spent a lot of time with the specialists and following up on them, pushing back, frankly, on some of the things that they wanted to do, and echoing some of the sentiments that have been said. The daughter that did have an IEP, I feel we ended up pulling her out of it because really all that was happening was they were just making accommodations to her and just making it easier for her to slide through, and she was not prepared for college when she graduated as a result of that. So I know that's not the way to do it. That's one thing I know.
What I learned about special education is when I was student teaching. I was actually student teaching in Goffstown, and they had quite a few paras in there, and the children were in the classroom, so all-inclusive learning, which I agree with to some extent. But also to get more help in the classrooms, like I've been saying. I also have a daughter who she had an IEP. Came to Manchester, she doesn't have an IEP anymore, and it kind of seems like she too is kind of just sliding right in, and she's not ready for second grade work. So a lot more to learn on special education, but I do want to see more progress made towards that because, you know, a lot of kids need that help. They really do.
Mark Flanders again. I'll save a lot of time. Not being a member of the school board, there's not a lot I can say or know about it. You know, if I was there and knew the intricacies of it, I could weigh in, but I can't.
So I'm going to speak as a parent and give you my anecdotal views on special ed in Manchester as opposed to a school board member. My two daughters recently graduated together. One of my daughters was valedictorian, graduated #1 in her class. My other daughter has Down syndrome and graduated at the very bottom of her class. The first thing I'll say is that the federal and state government has made promises to the state of New Hampshire about funding special ed that I don't think have ever been met. So those promises need to be kept. I don't think that's going to happen. But my views on the special ed, we were very happy for my daughter who has Down syndrome. We had an IEP. The school system gives a lot of attention to her. She, you know, obviously she was able to, she can read and write. It's not the perfect, but she can use her computer. She uses a smartphone. So she's made great progress. The Manchester focuses a lot of attention and resources on kids with special needs and special education. What they don't do is focus a lot of resources and attention on kids who are talented and gifted. Those kids, they rise to the top on their own. They have to work hard. They have to seek out their own pathway. It's unfortunate, but I would say that comparing those two very drastic differences, we're doing pretty good on special ed. We're not doing so good on talented and gifted children. Thank you.
Hi, Leslie Want, Ward 4. My goddaughter has Down syndrome, went through the Manchester City School District and did beautifully, much like Ross's daughter. And her mother is a tremendous advocate for her. And I think that makes a really big difference. I have another very best friend who taught special needs children for 25 years in the middle school. And my understanding is that even when IEPs are written, that sometimes it's difficult to get what students need because of cost. And I think that's something a board needs to keep an eye on and be aware of. And so that's something I would definitely do, is keep an eye on that. I want to make sure that every kid gets what they need. And cost is incredibly important. I got to agree with Rich. I know that comes up a lot with our board and, of course, with our budget for our school district. But I know Ross is right, too, that we haven't gotten the funding that we need from the state and federal government, given the mandates that have been passed down. And that's my take on special ed. Thank you.
Mary George's Ward 4. Ward 3, I'm sorry.
Let's move.
She's expanding her territory.
I'm Ward 3. For me, I'm concerned about the progress of the child, the assessment, what they're doing at the school before the child to go to another classes. Is really the true assessment or only one that really we need to focus on that. I can say myself, being in school board, I understand now some the problem for that special ed, because I have a child who was with that problem, and I never see the progress, never be change, but why? And there is like we say, parent involvement. Some parents don't even understand what's going on with their child. That's what I can say. Parents they're supposed to explain the parent. And there is some funding for child to go like in college. I hear that because I came to the training, I think so 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago. They said there is just a form 504.
504.
504, yeah. But parent doesn't know about that. And we need to work more about this problem, just like math.
Okay, Mary, we'll stay with you.
Okay.
And there's a couple of questions, and I'll let you kind of jump on these as you want because they're pretty related. So, one is, what is your position on segregation of special education? What are your policies or your thoughts on inclusion, push in versus pull out? What are your policies on restraints in schools? So you kind of pick any one of those three topics there. Yeah, I can. So segregation, so what is your position? What's that?
Mark's answer is not going to change.
What is your position on segregation of special education? And the second one kind of flows along with that, is what are your policies on inclusion? And so that, may be referring to a push-in, so inclusion into the classroom, or sometimes they're pulling out for special services. And then you may even want to comment then on what are your policies on restraints in school?
Are you doing that in order, or do you want anybody to jump in?
No, I'm going to
No.
do it. We're going to start with Mary, and we're going to go this way.
Okay, I'm going to choose for segregation. The way I understand.
Which one?
The first one,
Okay, got it. Yep.
segregation.
Okay.
I'm going to start with that one. Why, for me, because there is a problem. Kids doesn't read good inside the class. And those who reading, they have no problem for reading. Even they are the same classes. When one of them reads good and you don't read very good, and you look like now you are intimidated yourself. And for me, if there is a segregation to put those kids in special another classes, or to make them ready to understand each other, they have a problem, they are facing difficult situation, then to put them with those who already know how to do, because that make kids down too. I can say it's the same thing, like I can say when they put all the kids in the same classes, like those in level 4 and the level 1. Do you think so those kids can understand the same thing? No, that's where I am. I think so, depending. But if a parent doesn't understand, as a parent, I can say I would like to divide the classes. Thank you.
Leslie Want, Ward 4. It's my ward. I really think that this is another case of one size does not fit all. And it depends on, when you're talking about a special needs child, what is it that they're needing? I mean, is their disability they have Asperger's, or is it they have Down syndrome, or is it somewhere on a spectrum between any of that? And so I don't think one size can fit all. In the 5th grade classroom that I'm in now, we have some kids who leave at various times to be pulled out for help, and that helps them. That's great. And we have kids who come in during the day. So I think it's again a one size not fits all. It's all of the above. Thank you.
Commissioner Edelblut, if you could just read the question again, please.
Sure. So what is your position on the segregation of special education? What are your policies on inclusion? And what are your policies on restraints in school?
Okay, so I'm going to try to cover as much ground as possible. My understanding is that it's illegal to restrain students. You have to do the least amount of, I actually took the class, I forget the name of the class, but when a child's acting unruly, you have to use the least amount of physical intervention possible. You can't, use like a mechanical restraint on the children. As far as segregation, again, looking back at my own experience with my daughter, I think in the earlier grades, it's easy to include all children in the classes. As the years progress, as you get up to close to 12th grade, then you're going to have an intellectual difference, a difficulty that's going to require the kids to be separate. The other thing, certain subject matters, for instance, art, gym, you could have anybody in, but I'm just thinking of my own daughter. She wasn't going to be able to sit in a calculus class with other kids. It just wasn't going to happen. So I get it's very I think it's subject specific, it's grade specific, and it's individual specific. But we should, I think our policy or our goal should be to include all kids together. But again, it's going to be a very specific thing.
You did great.
All right, thanks.
Mark Flanders again, Ward 4, and he did do great. I couldn't have said it better. So, and I mean that. I will generalize, though. Basically, I agree with him. Restraints you can't have, policy of inclusion to the point that he elaborated on inclusion, and I agree with that. Thank you.
I feel like there is many needs that need to be met with children. So, the term special needs, well, what need is it? You have children who have trouble reading, have trouble doing math. Why not, pull them out of classroom, at a certain time as a little group, learn as a little group for a certain time each day. But then the children who actually are above and beyond the reading level and above and beyond the math level, why can't we pull them out as well? Because even the children who do wonderful at reading and math, they could be disrupting the class. My son is one, so he's disrupting the class even though he already did his work, he completed it. He's bored, exactly. But my daughter, on the other hand, she's pulled out because she is behind. So I think there is great benefit to pulling children out for that, reason. Pulling out is not necessarily a bad thing in my eyes, I've seen a lot of benefit.
So I think, echoing a lot of what Ross said, we need to be as inclusive as we can and as inclusive as makes sense in each individual case depending on the child. But at some point, what we also need to do is to balance that with the needs of the other 20 or 25 kids in the classroom. We've got firsthand experience with one of my daughters who, for several years, had a kid in her classroom where, basically once a month, they would have to empty out the classroom and let this child play out, whatever his disruptions were to the classroom. So instead of segregating one child, we took 25 of them and segregated 25 kids. I don't see how that makes sense.
Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. So as far as restraints go, I mean, the rule across the board, and I spent some time working on a psychiatric hospital, is least restrictive to most restrictive. And it is never okay to restrain a child. I don't care what's going on, it's never okay. Anybody under the age of 18, actually I'll put under the age of 15, should never be restrained by a teacher or a member of staff. I just think that's totally unacceptable. Inclusion, well, again, this inclusion really depends on a diagnosis. I mean, yes, you want someone, if you pick people on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum, and you have a high-functioning autistic child who really just needs some supports but would benefit by being socialized in a regular classroom, then by all means include them. But if you're talking about low-functioning autistic children who are nonverbal, no, it wouldn't be appropriate to include them in a regular classroom. It's really dependent on their diagnosis. It's not a situation or an answer you can give across the board. We do have some issues, and I'll speak to what Mr. DiPietro said. We do have a significant amount of emotional behavioral disorder children, and that poses a different problem for us because while we're focusing all of our attention on that one child, we're taking our attention away from the 25 other children who are in the classrooms. So it's kind of a catch-22 all the way around. But as far as restraints, I don't ever think it's okay to restrain a child.
Jimmy, Ward 8. I agree. Obviously, it's never okay to restrain a child. A couple things I will say on the lower grades, as Ross mentioned. As far as segregation, absolutely not. I think it's called life. These are life skills that our younger kids can learn to people that aren't like them, and how to deal with them. As they get older, of course, obviously the teaching methods and stuff change, so that does need to be addressed. As far as inclusion, there's a couple things I think we should look at. One, class size. I think that one of the reasons why redistricting is so important. I think class sizes in certain areas, certain schools, and the relationship with the teacher. I think in my own situation, I had a son that talked about this teacher, was like God. I mean, it was phenomenal. Did you know what he said today? Did you know what he said today? And then in the same class, we had another teacher that he just could not deal with him. So one class he's doing great, and then come to find out that they just had their personalities matched. So is it a personality conflict? We should definitely look into everything, look into that. And one thing I will say, Southside, there's another school we could talk about tonight. They have a thing, RTI, where students can go during school day and ask the teachers for help. My student has benefited greatly from it since they started it. And I think it's a great program, and I think what Southside is doing is fantastic.
As far as, I'm going to speak about the restraints, because our district had some pretty tough, not tough problems, but we had some problems when the law changed about a year ago. Some people interpreted it that you cannot touch the child at all. And we were having teachers actually put on paid administrative leave because they did restrain the child. And under the law, if you can restrain a child if they're going to hurt themselves or hurt others, and it's a gray line when you make that decision. But I don't believe in restraining, but I do believe that if the child is going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else, that there are methods of restraining, and CPI, we do teach our teachers CPI, but there are methods to restrain, and under the law, it allows you to restrain as long as you don't hold certain body parts from movement. So as far as restraining, it is a difficult situation, but we do have children in our schools that if they don't get restrained or moved out of the classroom, they will be a safety hazard for themselves or the children in their class. And I do have to go with what Mr. DePietri had mentioned, which when I hear that 25 students have to leave a class so that a student can de-escalate, and that could take as much as 30 minutes before that student de-escalates, what do we do with the other 25 students, why that student is de-escalating? That's a concern to me. And when we look at seat time and with the hours calendar that we're under, if this happens once a month, or how many minutes are those students missing out on curriculum by sitting out in the hallway by somebody to de-escalate? So it is a concern, and it does happen, I think, more often than not in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to answer the question by not answering the question, because it involves subject matter that I'm honestly not familiar with, and I don't consider myself really any more educated about it for having listened to everybody else up here. And I think it's probably fraught with some terms that, if improperly used, have consequences. But John 42. Which would be Parker Varney. One of the things I do want to say, though, is I believe that the Manchester School District has over-identified special ed kids. The national average for special ed is 12%. We have in excess of 18% of our population identified. That's a big gap, and I don't know why that exists. But one of the things that we've learned by how Parker Varney is working with kids now is that since they've started doing it, they've actually reduced the number of kids that have been referred for special ed services by a third. And they've done something which people tell me is unheard of. They've actually tested several kids out of needing their IEPs or their special ed services. So I think fundamentally one of the issues of segregation, inclusion, pullouts, put-ins, and all this other fun stuff is, are we really identifying why the child, for example, can't read, and are we addressing that, or are we just throwing up our hands and say, oh, the kid needs special ed? and putting them in a program with an IEP that isn't going to be any more responsive than what wasn't working in the first place.
Great. Okay, we're going to change topics a little bit again. So Jimmy, this one's to you. Do you believe that currently teachers are respected for their knowledge and their experience in Manchester?
That's a great question. I think teachers have too much red tape. I think we hire teachers to do a job, and then we tell them how to do their job in the classroom. I think we've spent since I've been involved and been watching the school boards and stuff, we're creating policies that basically stymie the teacher, doesn't let them be creative, doesn't let them use their skills in ways that they feel they can. I also, on that same vein, feel that some of the way our system is set up allows for styminess and allows for creative teachers to be knocked down and the not so creative teachers to be propped up. I think that needs to be addressed. I don't believe that's a board issue. That's a whole nother issue. But there are great teachers. And unfortunately, there aren't some few not good teachers. I said it. And I think we need to have a system or develop something that we somehow, I don't want to use the term grade, but where certain teachers need help, they get help. Where certain teachers shine, we let them shine.
Lisa, we'll go here. Yep.
Go that way.
Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. So I would say sometimes. I've been fortunate in the 13 years my son was in the school district to really come across some outstanding educators, people who really wanted to be there, who were very invested in kids and very invested in my son. And there's sometimes when they're not respected. I guess it's like being on the school board. Sometimes we get respect, sometimes we don't. It's, it's just like any public service job or public sector job. What concerns me about teachers is their fear of coming to us with issues or going to the administration with issues. And I think that honestly, that really breaks my heart. It does, because we want to be able to help these teachers. We want to give them the respect and the kudos that they deserve, but we can't help if we don't know what the problems are. So I would say sometimes, yes, I think teachers are respected sometimes, and I think sometimes they're not respected. How can you hug every single teacher in the district? You can't. I mean, there isn't anyone sitting at this table who doesn't understand what a thankless, difficult job it is. Nobody here sitting could say, yeah, we think they make too much money, or they don't do their job. No one would say that, but sometimes they're not respected. They're not. I just wish they'd come to us once in a while. We might be able to help.
So one of the candidates earlier mentioned something about "In God We Trust, all others bring data." That's my line. That's who he was referring to. I used to work in manufacturing, and there's a statistical guru that's his quote. So I bring that up because I did a survey a couple of months ago when I first launched my candidacy. I wanted to know what the voters thought. And one of the questions I asked was, do you think the Manchester School District respects teachers? And do you think parents respect teachers? And the questions were skewed definitely in the no direction. But you have to define respect. I think when you say, are teachers respected, you've got to provide a definition. And frankly, some people's definition is money, right? And it's kind of like the same way professional athletes judge respect, right? Respect is based on how much you pay me in your contract. But I think there are other ways to express your respect for teachers in addition to how much you compensate them. So the first thing you have to do is define it.
I think on this subject, what I would touch on is, what Lisa said about, are the teachers kind of being heard? Are they being heard about, what the needs are in their classroom, needs are for students, and so on. They're with our kids all day, more than we are. So they know what they need. Teaching is a tough job. They must love doing it, obviously, if they're doing it. So I think we need to be respectful of that, but also if they do have issues, they should be coming, to administration or the board, and so on, and, so they can be heard and have a voice.
Mark Flanders, Ward 4. I'll pivot off of what John said and agree with it. It's how you define it. I think they are respected. If you define that as pay, I guess that's up to interpretation, in my opinion, in terms of the pay. I think having firsthand experience having kids in the schools, I think these teachers are wonderful. I'm just amazed how good these teachers are. I've probably run across one teacher that I could say was a bad teacher since I've been there. So my perception is they are respected throughout the community, and I assume the school board respects them as well. Thank you.
Ross Terrio. I think in general, and it's sad, and I'm a little bit jaded because I'm on the student conduct committee, but I would say in general that it's a symptom of our society that teachers are less respected now, but as is government. Government is less respected than it used to be. Many institutions are less respected. I just think of when I was a kid that teachers were on a higher level and maybe on a pedestal, but since that time even. But again, I'm a little bit jaded because I'm on the student conduct committee, so I'm dealing with students and parents who definitely don't respect, in many cases, don't respect the teachers who are, physically and verbally abusive of teachers. So, again, that's one aspect that I get to see. But I will say this, and let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of our teachers are miracle workers in Manchester. They do so much with so little. I know for a fact that we have students. I have personal knowledge of this. There are many communities outside of Manchester that look down upon the Manchester school system. But the reason why I said a few seconds ago that our teachers are miracle workers, I know for a fact that we have students every year that we send to Ivy League colleges, some of the best colleges in the world, with some of the best students from private and public schools, not only in America, but around the world. And in the feedback that we get from these students, the education that they got in the Manchester School District allows them not only to compete, but to exceed expectations at these schools. So our teachers are doing a great job, but again, unfortunately, in many cases, they don't get the respect that they deserve. Thank you.
Leslie Wan, Ward 4. I think the very fact that you're asking this question probably indicates to us that the teachers don't get the respect that they deserve. I don't know why, and if I feel like particularly in Manchester, why they don't get the respect they don't deserve. I think it might have a lot to do with leadership. And I have to say I'm thrilled to have Dr. Vargas on board now because he is such a cheerleader for our district and a cheerleader for all of the teachers and how hard they work, and they are miracle workers. I just want to say, my children's elementary school, the principal did allow all parents to choose their child's teacher for the next grade. And I just want to tell you that every time parents did that, you would think that everybody chooses the same teacher. They did not. Everybody picked the same teacher their child had before, or that their older child had. And that just tells me all of our teachers are good, because you would find like a family with just all the, Mr. Smith's class would always have the entire Kasperger family because they all loved Mr. Smith, And I think we have great teachers. We just don't say it enough. But I do think that's partly responsibility of leadership. And I don't mean just school leadership, I mean city leadership. And across the board, the newspaper, everybody, we should all be cheering our teachers. Thank you.
What I can say myself, according to my understanding, the teacher, they are respected for us, like a school board or parents. But can it be sometimes teachers not respected to the student? The student, they don't respect it. Why? That's where we're supposed to ask a question. because as a parent, sometimes the kids can come to tell you what the teacher done in class, or you can see the student can say, I don't like that teacher. That teacher from my teacher, or that teacher, the kids always say that. This one is that we can say ourselves, we need to ask a question if the student don't give much respect to the teacher, why? But according for parents or all of us, but the one is inside the class is the student. They know better to answer that question.
Commissioner, could you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. Do you believe that currently teachers are respected for their knowledge and experience in Manchester?
Well, I'm going to play a bit off of what's been said here, and the question is, what does it mean to be respected for your knowledge and experience? And then I guess the corollary question to that is, respected by whom? Are we talking about administrators, either in the building or in the district? Are we talking about parents? Are we talking about taxpayers? Are we talking about students? And so I think the question is a bit vague and overly broad. I will say, however, because I've had these conversations with past MEA presidents. I grew up the son of an MEA president, and I specifically did not go into teaching because the teachers drove me crazy. And the reason why they drove me crazy is they never had a good thing to say about the parents, the public, the taxpayers. Manchester was always backwards. It didn't care about education. They spent a lot of time publicly running down the very community whose kids they were teaching. And I think to a large degree that still exists today, especially at budget time or contract time, when they're, in my opinion, their own worst public relations nightmare in pursuit of their cause. And so I think they've been, as a group, there's been polarization. I think anybody who's had ongoing contact with their kids, teachers, and has got a working relationship, likes them, respects them. I think Manchester, has been said here, has got a whole lot of good teachers and some teachers that need to find perhaps a different career. But I think as a general concern, and this is something that I have said on multiple occasions, their public relations is not good. And I will end by saying this. After seeing Principal Gillis and Principal Krantz before the Board of Mayor and Aldermen a couple weeks ago, I actually sent them a thank you note. It's the first time in years I saw somebody from the buildings at the Manchester School District actually present some appreciation, some gratitude, some positive news about what they were able to do with the resources they were given. It's the first time in years I saw a presentation that made me as a member of the public, made me as a school board member, made me as a parent go, wow. It's nice to know that there is that kind of goodwill, and it's nice to know that those things are happening. I hope I hear more of this.
First and foremost, I would like to say that we have the greatest teachers in the state. There's no teacher in this state that's going to have the diversification that our teachers deal with on a day-to-day basis in Manchester. And they do a wonderful job. And I want to echo what Committeeman Terrio said. We have students graduating from high school, going to Ivy League colleges, going right into the workforce, right out of MST with apprentice programs. So we are training our students for the 21st century. But with that being said, I think people that have an appreciation for education respect the teachers. With the Great Recession, I don't believe public employees in general don't get the respect, because people's incomes have diminished because of employment, and they look at public employees as fat cats. We get up, we don't work enough, and we get paid too much. So I see that across the board. As a public employee myself, a retired firefighter, I even see how firefighters and police officers are treated now. And I think it's just the nature of being a public employee in these times. And when the economy was great, they didn't really care about public employees because people were all making money. But now that the economy is a little tight, I think we're held under a bigger microscope.
Great. Okay, we're going to do one more lightning round, and then we're going to go to closing comments. And we're going to do a lightning round because I got 3 questions on this one. So, are you open to redistricting? A yes or a no?
Absolutely.
Definitely, yes. We need it.
Yes.
Yes. Is it a one word?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that was too easy then. Okay, well, those 3 people in the audience are all happy. Okay, so we will now move to closing comments. You get 1 minute of time, and I believe we started here, so we're going to start over here with you, Mark.
Again, Mark Flanders, Ward 4. Thanks for having this tonight, presenting this. The reason I'm running is I'm running to bring change to the district. I believe I bring experience, but first and foremost, I want to serve. And by serve, I say that I'm an insurance manager. I manage a huge budget. I deal with human resources. I deal with federal and state regulatory and law enforcement agencies. I deal with litigation. I want to give back to the community and give my knowledge and my work experience back to the community and hopefully bring some change to the district, because I've been living in this city my whole life and I think things need to change, and I will vote differently than the majority of this board votes now for that change. Thank you.
Ross Terrio, Ward 7. One of the major reasons why I want to be reelected is redistricting. For me, that's one of the primary issues that we can affect change to. There's a lot of things that we'd like to do, but they're really not realistic, whereas redistricting is. And I've said this before, a lot of the things that I think makes a good school committee member is, common sense and work ethics and showing up in attendance. People don't realize there's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes that's mundane, that's not really flashy, but it's part of the job. And nothing against anybody, but some people don't realize that that you have to do these things. For instance, I spent an hour this morning sitting at the intersection of Haywood and Jewett Street because there was a complaint about parking around the Hallsville School. Not really glamorous. I just sat there for an hour just watching traffic. Another day, the Vice Chairman Beaudry and myself, we sat through 3 lunches over at Memorial because there was a complaint about overcrowded lunchroom in the cafeteria. There's a lot of mundane things that we do that that go into being a school board. I think an effective and good school board member. The other thing that's important to me, I think important to my constituents, is constituent services. I answer every phone call, email. I can't always solve people's problems, but I always at least try to do something for them. Thank you.
Leslie Want, Ward 4, and I'm running again because I think there's some really serious work to be done by this board coming up in this next term. I think we need to look at the overcrowding, and redistricting will help solve that. But I have to say, if we're going to redistrict because we're going to reallocate classrooms, we're only doing that so we can make more classrooms, take the open classrooms from the high school and put them in the elementary school where we're overcrowded. If we create those classrooms for elementary schools by redistricting, we have to realize that's not going to be a cost savings. We're going to have to put teachers in those classrooms. If you want to reduce class sizes, and you have to open up more classes, and you're going to need more teachers. And that's not a cost savings, but redistricting is incredibly important. And I really want to work with the superintendent on this class size issue. And I also am really on board with what they're doing in Parker Verde, and I'd really like to support that multi-grade level classroom model that they have as well.
I'm a Mary Georges. I represent Ward 3. My accomplishment really to be to be here, to be in a school board, what I get here, making me really understand the importance of education to all. And that's why, as a servant leader, really, I want to be in a school board because I want to support the student, family, and the staff. And I understand too why to be here. Even that really, I am a servant, and I want to serve everybody, even the school board. That's why I like it to be here. And I think so my voice is very important to anyone. Just to tell somebody to vote for Mary Georges.
Yes, I'm Rich Gerard. I represent the school district at large. I want to say two things about prior answers. One was a yes or no. The reason why I would have a choice model, the question was, would you pay for kids to go to Pinkerton and whatever other schools? The answer why I said yes is because I assumed if our kids could go there, their kids could come to Manchester, and that sets up more options for kids. And I assumed, like Hooksett, there'd be a cap on the amount of money that got spent by the district. And if teachers want to be respected for their knowledge and professionalism, then when they come forward and speak publicly, that's what it should be about, and their input should be offered on the issues facing the district beyond budgets and contracts. That said, one of the things I hope this election cures are some of the personal and spiteful issues that persist on the board despite people's best efforts. I said what I would bring to the board is something I think I brought to the board, and that is focus. We stay on the issues, we look for the solutions, we avoid the personality conflicts, strike back if you have to, but never strike first. And keep in mind that anytime you spend squabbling over something that exercises a personal vendetta is time not spent figuring out how we can do better for the kids. So with that, thank you.
Arthur Beaudry, Ward 9. I just want to say I'm extremely humbled to represent the constituents in Ward 9. And as a public servant, most of my life, 10 years in the military, 22 years on the fire department, I wanted to give back. And I felt this is a good way to give back. I have 3 children that went through the public school systems in Manchester. They're all, thank God, successful in their lives, and I want to do that for the students, the children coming up. And I just want to bring some things that we actually have accomplished, because people don't talk about our accomplishments. They always talk about the negative stuff in Manchester. But we did get health, Spanish, and reading in the middle schools this year under our budget. We got the SROs. We retained the SROs in our middle schools. We closed a $5 million budget gap with very little impact to our staffing. We lowered the class sizes in the elementary schools. We also eliminated the excess assessment testing throughout the district. And these accomplishments are not only because of the board members that are sitting here, but also Dr. Vargas. I can't say enough about that man. Since he's been here in the last year, he has done tremendous things, and I really want to get 2 more years to work with him to continue this progress. And that's the reason why I ran, and that's even why I want to continue to run. Thank you.
Jimmy LaHoo, Ward 8. Thank you for being here, and thank you for hosting. I attended a meeting today, and Mayor Dupree said something that struck me. Vision without resources is called hallucination. And I think too many times on this board, especially this past board, there's been a lot of infighting. I actually had, as I was walking, I had somebody tell me that they watch the meetings because it's frankly the most entertaining thing on TV. And so we're pulling away from resources. We're not putting resources in the proper place. The word I chose for myself was innovative. When you asked us, what do you say? Innovative in the sense that I'm in the trade business. I work construction. I'm already working on a 5-point plan to get trade exposure to our middle schools at a younger age. Part of that plan is possibly taking a semester and breaking it up into 6 3-week different trades into one semester, 6 different programs. In doing this, I'm able to work with trade organizations such as Associated Builders or Association of General Contractors to work with them, the New Hampshire Technical Trade right here in Manchester, who recently endorsed me. And I'm working with them to set up this program, possibly with one of our current schools now. So when I talk about innovation, I'm talking about thinking outside the box, using the private partner, or continuing what Dr. Vargas has done with the private partner business. So I'm Jimmy LaHoo, and I share Ward 8, and I hope to get your vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. First, I'd like to say that it has been my distinct pleasure to serve on this board for the past 2 years. I will echo the sentiments of these gentlemen before me that, yes, I want to give back. I want to perform service. Subsequently, because I want to be a public service, I will never take the health insurance that's offered by the school district. I would rather see that money go back into the 2 schools in my ward to make sure that those children have what they need. I never think it's okay for a public servant to be in a better position financially than the people that they represent. And given the current climate with health insurance right now, I know a lot of people in my ward are living paycheck to paycheck and not being able to afford health insurance. So given that, I will never take the health insurance. It's really important to continue to support Dr. Vargas. There are some factions on the board who do not support Dr. Vargas and his vision for this district, but I do. I see a man who has a clear path and a clear vision and a wide open mind into finding ways to make this district the best in the state. We deserve that. We should be the district that every other district in the state models after. We can do that. We can do that. I would like 2 years to be able to implement some of those changes. We've already started. I want to continue with really drilling down on special ed and finding out how can we fix the problem, how can we serve these kids that really do have these very crucial special ed needs and not bust the bank. And I'm just thrilled about the work that we're doing on curriculum instruction right now. We're finally peeling back the layers of this big onion and coming to some agreements with the school level administration as well as the administration at the SAU on how we can better serve kids. And we're not trying to micromanage people. We want to understand. So again, I'm Lisa Freeman, Ward 5. I would love another 2 years to represent Ward 5, and thank you.
John DePietro, Ward 6. I want to thank the commissioner. You've been very generous with your time tonight. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. Thank John Liscars for being our timekeeper. Thank my wife for working her tail off all day today to put all of this together. And I want to thank everybody here for giving up 2 hours of your time to come and listen to this deep dive into detail, because there's a lot of voter apathy out there, but it's not in this room. So I appreciate that, and I'm very glad to see it. I was on a TV talk show last night, and somebody called and asked if I was going to be an independent voice, and I didn't do a great job of answering it. We got kind of sidetracked. So I want to say, because I'm not an ideologue, I'm not beholden to any groups, I don't hold any conflicts of interest, and I am going to, these people aren't going to like me very much because I'm going to ask a million questions, and I'm going to hold people accountable. And speaking of conflicts of interest, one last appeal. And again, this probably isn't directed at any of the people in this room, but this is not for myself, this is for my city, because we're turning into a banana republic. We've got people on the Board of Aldermen and on the Board of School Committee who are knowingly, brazenly, unapologetically breaking the law, looking you in the eye and daring you to do something about it. So let's see if you do.
Kelly Thomas, Ward 12. Once again, I want to thank everybody for coming and hosting. I want to say that I don't have experience on a committee. I'm brand new, but I am learning more and more every day, also from these wonderful people right here. What I do have experience in is with children. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I have experience in being an advocate. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor full-time. So I advocate for clients all day, every day, my number one priority. So I know that I can make, the committee number one priority, the children, taxpayers, parents, teachers, everyone involved, number one priority. I love how Art, brought up things that are going well with the board. I think that's very important to bring up. Don't focus on the negative. Focus on a lot of the positive. It's a committee. People should be working all together, not apart and against each other. So that's great that he brought that up. I do feel that, some stuff in the committee needs to be, redirected. So I'm hoping to be a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you, and then thank you, audience, everyone, for coming out this evening and
Yeah.
listening to all these questions. We appreciate that. And there's a lot of food in the back of the room.